Hi and welcome to my third comic strip making video for my Creative Alchemy comic. This is the 8th strip. This is going to be the coloring process video. Hi, my name is Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist in the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 25 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So coloring this time around was a little bit different. I didn't have the same type of selections that I used to have. This was a little bit more in a painterly kind of style. One of the first things that you're going to see me do is I'm going to have to create a color model sheet for the newest character that I'm introducing into this comic strip because I hadn't done it. One of the unique elements of this particular design of this particular character is that she's got pajamas, and the pajamas have a kind of a texture. They have skulls on them. I didn't want to have to draw the skulls every single time, so what I did was I created a tile, and then the tile was kind of like a selection layer that I just put on the character. Just grabbed and dropped the tile, and then the tile texture was on the character, and then I would just erase the parts around it to make it look like the character had the skulls. So that needed to be, that I did earlier, but the problem is that when I did that originally, I didn't color the skulls because I didn't know what color they were. So the very first thing I needed to do was figure out what color everything needed to be, and then I had to recreate the tile with the skulls in that color, and then you'll see what that looks like. So let's take a look. Okay, so as I said a moment ago, the first order of the day here was to get these colors of this character correct. And when I was coloring the skulls, I realized that coloring each individual skull was going to be a major pain in the tuchus. So this is when I got the idea that maybe I should, here I am creating the tile, but first I needed to figure out what color the skulls were going to be. So that's when, and then after that, see, I decided to start placing the skulls on every single one of these pajamas, and I would erase, using a mask, all the areas that needed to be erased. And then I started coloring the character. So I put the very first thing I did was put the tiles on everything. Second thing I did was start coloring. Oh, and then I forgot that I needed to do textures, so I ended up putting a watercolor texture on all the characters that I'm coloring. Reason why is because that's the style I wanted to go with. I wanted to look as if this is colored in watercolor. So there's a watercolor texture on everything, even though I'm actually using the airbrush tool to color all these characters. And as I was going along, I realized that the characters, I usually don't touch the lines. I wanted to keep the lines kind of like this red umber kind of line quality. But in this case, for some reason, there was something about how dark and blue everybody was, and the lines just clashed. So I started actually going in and coloring the lines themselves so that they matched a little bit more of the color of the character's clothes. And here I am actually adding a statue so that it looked right. And here I'm adding the tiles for the ground based off of my reference over on the left, and then I have that so all of these were just kind of like tiles that I had created for the purpose. And this was one of the hardest and most annoying parts of the process, which was putting all the textures on these backgrounds. And I ended up being very sloppy with it because the characters were going to cover it up anyway, and I didn't want to get that to make too much of a big deal about it and overdo the textures. Now, if you notice, this is what it looks like without the textures. It looks a little bit too smooth. It looks a little bit too, I don't know what it doesn't look good. I just don't like the way it looks without any of the textures. Which is, and then I was wondering when as I was coloring this, why does it look so weird? I don't understand. And I'm like, oh, I forgot the textures. So as you can see there, I put the textures back in, and then I like the way that it looks much more with textures in it. It gives it that much more of a hand colored look to it. One of the things that that I tend to do, and I go out of my way to do, is if you notice when I see over on the left, you see the colors that I'm picking from, and there's 3. And for each individual part, like just the pajamas or the shirts have 3, and the skins have 3 colors, and the hair has 3 different colors. And the reason I do that is because the color in the middle is the color of its most neutral look. Like that's the color of the object. But objects in real life are affected by light, and they usually don't keep their value, their consistent value. They tend to be in a constant state of gradation of some sort. So what I tend to do is I take the middle value and then I lighten it up and I add a little bit more red or something like that, and then the other value I darken it up and I add a little bit more blue, so that it's so that there's a change in color throughout. So none of the characters have on their skin or on their clothes or on their hair, none of them have a flat color. They all are in some way gradating between different values and hues of the different values within the hue, right? That's the idea. So that it feels more natural. And in the process here, what I'm doing is I'm adding light, but I'm also adding blush, blood on the faces, for example, right there. And I'm also adding a bounce light. So like the light coming from the environment is bouncing off of the characters. And I'm also adding a rim light being like there's a heavy light somewhere and it's highlighting some of the mostly the left hand side. So you could see me put the rim light in there. And then and then putting in highlights in there, putting in a little bit more of light coming in and stuff like that. And so near the end, I started finishing up and I started adding textures on the white side of the paper so that there could be something there. But the biggest thing that there was a lot of values, a lot of contrast that wasn't working, so I needed to fix that at the end. When it comes to coloring, there's a bit of trial and error that you really needed to do and make sure that everything is working. I thought actually when I got to this point that I was actually done, and I sat on it for a day and I realized that, oh boy, it needs a whole lot more light. A lot of the characters ended up getting really dark, and I just didn't like the way that it ended up looking. So I added a bunch of light on especially on Kelsey over here, and in spots where I thought it needed it. But once that was done, I was done and I was happy with how it turned out. So yeah, that's the coloring process. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this, and I will talk to you next time. All right, bye.